All right, welcome back. I am talking about the worst premenstrual symptoms, irregular periods, also called perimenopause periods. These were my worst of the worst. So, Hopkins medicine says periods can become longer, shorter, heavier, or lighter. During the latter part of perimenopause, the length of time between periods increases and periods become irregular and infrequent. When estrogen levels are high and progesterone levels are low, there is often a high buildup of endometrial lining, increased lining, combined with a lack of ovulation, lack of signaling to stop building the lining or to shed the lining. This can result in heavy and prolonged periods. During the earlier part of perimenopause, when estrogen levels rise, it can cause your uterus to release more prostaglandins. Prostaglandins. Tell me if I said that right. Prostaglandins, which increases the severity of your period cramps. Also, some women develop a condition called endometriosis, and that can cause painful bleeding. If you know anybody with endometriosis, or if you have it, you know that it's extremely painful. So this can happen during perimenopause. So then let's jump over to the other website. It's going to be down in the description. Okay, the first sign of perimenopause, typically a disruption of your menstrual cycle. For many women, your period starts earlier or later than normal. Some women start skipping months entirely and then experience heavier than normal periods when they do have them. Periods can become longer, shorter, heavier, or lighter. During the latter part of perimenopause, the length of time between periods increases and periods become irregular and infrequent. When estrogen levels are high and progesterone levels are low, there is often a high buildup of increased lining combined with a lack of ovulation. This can result in heavy and prolonged periods. During the earlier part of perimenopause, when estrogen levels rise, it can cause your uterus to release more prostaglandins, which increase the severity of your period cramps. Also, some women develop a condition called endometriosis, which can cause painful bleeding. So a lot of this was also said from the Hopkins. Okay, so for me, this was a bad one. I was 38 years old and my periods were not regular or normal. I had my normal one every month at the end of the month, and I started to have spotting in between. They were a lot heavier. I went to the doctor. I did a bunch of research and I went to the doctor, and he told me that there was absolutely no way that I could be going through perimenopause because I was too young, that it's impossible. And I told him my family, my mother, my aunts, everybody went through menopause at an early age. He said, nope, it is impossible, and he dragged me through every single test he could possibly think of of why I am spotting and I'm bleeding more and just all of it. And every single test came back negative. And he got to where he told me, threw his hands up in the air and said, I don't know what's causing this. I said, I am starting perimenopause. And he said, nope, and I cannot help you. I really liked that OBGYN. He delivered. He was my OBGYN with my daughter. I loved him. He was great. I trusted him. That was the moment. I didn't trust him. Well, I didn't trust him when he started putting me through all the tests and all the crap and the BS, and it was about 6 months of that shit that he did. But he threw his hands up in the air, said he couldn't help me. And that's fine. I found somebody else who could. He was You know, I'm not even going to go there. I'm sure you could think of some things yourself of what he was. But I did find a doctor who was great and said absolutely, especially if your family history does start early. Also, I started my period when I was very young. I was 10 years old. That's going to put me at an earlier start because I started early. So that was the beginning phases of my irregular periods. As time went on, it got to where it was extremely heavy. Blood clots. Looked like I was passing. It looked like my uterus was falling out of me is what it looked like, but just giant chunks of it. It was disgusting. I had my periods more often. I had, every time I went to the doctor, you know as well as I do, they always ask, when was your last period? And I would look at them and say, my real one or my bonus ones, my extra ones? And as soon as I said my extra ones, they all said, oh, you're going through perimenopause. These nurses and doctors all understood it. But yes, I had extra ones. I had the one at the end of the month. And by the end of my perimenopause, I was having a period, not back to back. It was broken up. 3 weeks out of the month, I bled. And I bled heavy and hard. It was horrible. It was painful. I used to get small cramps, nothing horrible. These were horrible. I had them in my back. I had them in my stomach. I had them everywhere. It felt like my uterus was being ripped out of me. I was a tampon user. Got to the point where the tampons was not holding the blood. It was so much. The Super Plus wasn't holding it. I was changing every hour. It was horrible. I couldn't smell the blood, but we all know that there's a blood smell. Hopefully nobody could smell it because I tried my hardest to keep clean. So what did I do? I wore pads. I'd wear tampons with pads. At night, I strictly used pads to get away from the tampons because we also know that tampons can cause other medical problems. I used heating pads on my back, on my stomach. This is where I did take ibuprofen. I took a lot of ibuprofen because the pain, the cramps were so bad. I carried baby wipes with me everywhere, so I was constantly cleaning because it was a bloody mess. Literally, it was a mess. It was horrible. But bleeding 3 weeks out of the month, I would bleed for 3 days, stop for 2, bleed for another 2 days, stop again, then start up again. But all in all, it totaled 3 weeks out of the month. Now, if you're losing that much blood, you can become anemic. Talk to your doctor about that. I took iron pills. My doctor told me to get some iron pills. I got some iron pills and I took them religiously. You need to keep your iron. You're losing the weight, or you're losing all that blood, and you need to keep your iron up. You don't want to become anemic. You don't need other health problems. So definitely talk to your doctor about this because it is very, very important. And if a doctor questions you and says things like, talk to your doctor about this. Make sure that it is actually perimenopause and it's not another health problem, because that could be the case as well. I did not have endometriosis, and I thank God for that. I did have scar tissue in my tubes, which I have had removed before, and that was from pelvic inflammatory disease when I was younger. I had it removed and it grew back. Scar tissue continues to grow. It doesn't just stop, it continues. So I didn't have endometriosis, but I do understand the pain of the scar tissue growing because it's painful and it hurts. Let's see, what else does this say? The period, I didn't go through shorter. I didn't go through lighter. It was normal, and then it got bad. And that was mine. It got bad until it finally stopped. And then it was great. Keep in mind too, pregnancy, stay on your birth control. Please stay on your birth control. So one of the things that I have found also is talk to your doctor about taking birth control. Stay on your birth control if your tubes are not tied or your husband or boyfriend isn't snipped, or you don't want, if you're not trying to get pregnant, make sure you're using protection. But birth control can help regulate the bleeding as well. I did not take birth control. I didn't even think about that with helping for my periods to regulate them. My tubes were tied, so I didn't see a need for it. And it wasn't discussed with me about taking it to help regulate. But also keep in mind that the older you are and taking the birth control, there's risks with that as well. My big thing is cancer runs in both sides of my family. I'm trying to avoid it like the plague because I don't want it. And so I'm going to avoid every risk that there is that's known that has a risk of causing cancer. I'm going to avoid it. So talk to your doctor about it. Birth control helps with the bleeding. My dog's going nuts. Birth control will help with the bleeding. But like I said, I didn't do it. I just kind of sucked it up and used heating pads and ibuprofen, baby wipes and pads, and just kind of dealt with it, got used to it, and I took my iron pills. So definitely talk to your doctor about taking iron pills. It's really important. All right. You have a good day.